Bollhuset, also called Stora Bollhuset, Bollhusteatern, and Gamla Bollhuset at various times, was the name of the first theatre in Stockholm, Sweden. It was the first Swedish theatre and the first real theatre building in the whole of Scandinavia. The name Bollhuset means the ball house, and it was built in 1627 for ball sports and used in this way for 40 years. The name Lejonkulan, however, was in fact the name of a different building, which was also used by the same theatre in the 17th century. Bollhuset was the scene of a long series of most important events in the history of the theatre in the city and in the history of Swedish theatre. Between 1667 and 1792 it was used as a theatre until it was demolished in 1793. Between 1737 and 1754, the first national theatre was located here. In 1773 to 1782, the Royal Swedish Opera was located here. In 1783 to 1792, the French Theatre of Stockholm was housed here. In 1787, the Second National Theatre was refounded in the building, and from 1788 to 1792 it was the home of the Royal Dramatic Theatre. History. The building was located on Slottsbacken near the Royal Palace Trädkrona. It was described as a large but simple rectangular building of white bricks with a hip roof. Bollhuset was built by the Crown for the royal court in 1627 as a house for ball sports, especially jeu de paume, which was at the time a very fashionable sport among the European aristocracy, and it was mainly used by the members of the royal court. From 1648, when an additional ball house was built, Bollhuset was referred to as Stora Bollhuset or Gamla Bollhuset, while the new ball house was called Lilla Bollhuset or Nya Bollhuset. In 1663 to 1679, it was owned by Charles Boyt and thereafter by his widow until it was taken over by the Crown again in 1699, when it was given to the French Court Theatre. 17th century theatre. From an unknown date during the 17th century, Bollhuset was occasionally used by the foreign travelling theatre companies, which performed in Sweden, where there was yet not native professional theatre. Because a ball house was usually designed with his spectator gallery around an arena, they were often used by travelling theatre companies in 17th century Europe, because both ball houses, Stora Bollhuset and Lilla Bollhuset in Stockholm, were used by theatre companies during the same period. It is difficult to establish which particular building was used by which company at which occasion, and there is some confusion about the theatrical activity during this first period. It is further more confusing because a third building, Lejonkulan, was also used by the travelling theatre companies during the same period. What is known as that Lilla Bollhuset is confirmed to have been used as a theatre between 1662 and 1686, and Lejonkulan between 1667 and 1689, while the first confirmed public theatre performance took place in Stora Bollhuset the 29th of October 1684. During the 17th century, foreign travelling theatre companies often visited Stockholm, especially from Germany and the Netherlands. An English troupe, the troupe of Joris Jollifoot, played in the city in 1648 to 1649. The German theatre troupe of Christian L. Thum performed in the city from 1628 to 1655, but it is not known if they ever performed in Bollhuset. The foreign actors at Bollhuset did play for the public, but as most people could not understand foreign languages, it remained mostly a theatre for the royal court and elite. An illustrating example of this is that the foreign troupe that seems to have been most popular among the public, the German troupe of the 1730s, was a troupe with displayed acrobatics, fireworks, tightrope walking and pantomime, and thus, with the more visual way of acting, was more easy to understand for those who could not understand the language spoken. In 1686, the first Swedish-language theatre, the non-professional student theatre Danswanska-Theatern, was inaugurated in Lejonkulan, and when Lejonkulan was demolished in 1689, it was moved to Bollhuset, where it performed until it was dissolved in 1691. Thereafter, Bollhuset was again used by foreign theatre companies in parallel to the Lilla Bollhuset. In 1699, Bollhuset was again taken over by the Crown and permanently redecorated to a theatre for the use of the French court theatre. The French theatre used it until 1706, when the theatre was closed due to the Great Northern War. After the Peace of 1721, it was again used by foreign theatre companies. The first national theatre, Kungliga Svenska Skådeplatsen. During the Age of Liberty, the first national theatre was to be founded at Bollhuset, then officially called Kungliga Svenska Skådeplatsen. In the 1720s and 1730s, the interest for amateur theatre was great in Stockholm, and a lot of temporary amateur troupes performed among the aristocracy. The most known one, Count de Lagarde's comedians, made by noble youths. After the amateur performance Tobias by a couple of idealistic students at the birthday of King Frederick I of Sweden in 1737, during a period when the building was empty after the last foreign troupe had left, the opinion wanted a theatre in their own language. This was granted by the Riksdag, who encouraged the establishment of the first native troupe of actors. One of the arguments taken up in the parliament was the large costs of the expensive foreign troupes. The first Swedish comedy performed on a public stage, Den Svenska Språkboken, was performed in October 1737 with Johan Palmberg and Beate Sabina Strass in the leading parts, and during the 1740s, the plays in Bollhuset was performed by native actors, in the native language, which made it accessible for the public for the first time. At this point, the theatre had 800 seats. Sweden now saw theatre, opera and ballet performed in the native language by native artists for the first time. It was temporarily closed by Regent Queen Ulrika Eleonora of Sweden in 1738 because of the clerical opposition, but soon reopened. The theatre was first under the rule of the state. Its first play was a political one. This did not last long, and from 1740 it was ruled by the theatre troupe themselves and entirely depended on the audience after the loss of government support. This first attempt to start a native Swedish theatre was interrupted. Though the Swedish theatre was popular among the public, the aristocracy, who were French-influenced, was less enthusiastic. After the 1753–54 season, the Swedish theatre was expelled from the localities in Bollhuset by Queen Louisa Ulrika of Prussia, who hired a French theatre company instead. The Swedish troupe split in two. One, the Stenborg troupe under Petter Stenborg, performed in smaller houses, touring around the city of Stockholm and in Finland, and the other toured in the countryside under Johan Bergholtz and Peter Lindahl. During the period of 1754–71, Swedish plays were only performed in the city stage of Bollhuset 2 times, Syrinx and Herkulesparskilljorvigen, by the Stenborg troupe. To the the benefit of musician Petter Lillström, spouse of the Swedish actress Elisabeth Lillström. The French Dulundal troupe followed the court and they stayed in Bollhuset only in winter. The French troupe held a high class and performed the latest plays from Paris, but as the public in general did not speak French, it was foremost a pleasure for the upper classes, though the public seems to have enjoyed the visual effects. The building was also used for public masquerade balls. The first was organized already in 1701 by the French troupe of Rosador, and the 1763 Carnival on Bollhuset attracted 600 guests and gave profit of section 6,000. The Second National Theatre and Opera in 1771, King Gustav III of Sweden fired the French theatre company, and the Swedish actors, led by Petter Stenborg, then saw their chance and asked to perform a play at the opening of the Parliament of 1772. At the opening of Parliament in 1772, the troupe of Petter Stenborg appeared before King Gustav III and all the public in Bollhuset after the French troupe had left it, and after this, the monarch decided to found a native-speaking opera and theatre. The 18th of January 1773, the opera Thetis and Felier, performed by Carl Stenborg and the concert singer Elisabeth Olin in the leading roles, inaugurated the Royal Swedish Opera, which was a great success. This was an opera, not a theatre, and the attempts to perform speaking drama was not very successful. At the inauguration, the building had been redecorated. The walls were painted in greyish-yellow, the boxes in red, except for the royal box, which was painted in blue and gold, and the ceiling a sky in white and gold. In 1781, the king, in his effort to establish a Swedish theatre, hired a group of French actors, led by Jacques-Marie Boutet de Monvel, to educate and perform with the first generation of new Swedish-speaking actors at Bollhuset. The opera was the year after, in 1782, moved to the new building of the Swedish Royal Opera and separated from the talking part actors, and this is considered the beginning of the Swedish theatre. The French troupe first performed at court, but began to perform for the public in Bollhuset in 1783, in the absence of an organized theatre school. The future Swedish actors became students of the French troupe, which educated several of the later famous Swedish actors of the Royal Dramatic Theatre, such as Lars Hjortsberg, Maria Frank and Inger Abik, and in 1787 an independent Swedish theatre troupe was founded under the leadership of Fredrik Ristel. The two troupes, the French and the Swedish, shared the same building but performed separately, was ruled independently and was considered two separate theatres, the French theatre and the Swedish theatre. In 1788, Fredrik Ristel fled the country to escape his creditors, and the actors formed a company and asked for the king's protection. He became the formal director, placed the theatre under royal protection, thus creating the Royal Dramatic Theatre. The Swedish theatre was to be ruled by the actors themselves by votes every 14th day under the supervision of the Royal Swedish Academy of Arts, according to the reports made by the Academy. This rule was quite chaotic, and the votings is described as capricious and temperamental. The male actors arguing with each other, one of the ladies voting yes because another lady voted no, other of them counting the buttons and letting fate decide, and in 1803, the actors themselves asked the system to be replaced by a director. In 1792, Bollhuset was deemed to be too old and decayed, and it was torn down. 1793, and the actors moved to the Palace Makalos, where the Royal Dramatic Theatre was to reside until 1825, after which it again was reunited with the opera. In 1798 to 1842, the theatres and operas of Stockholm were united by a royal monopoly. actors and companies in the theatre of Bollhuset. Until 1689, the theatre was also located at the stage of Lejonkulan. This troupe opened the theatre at the stage of Lejonkulan with the play Orent Censura by Magnan in February 1667. Salomon Fino, Jan Baptista van Voornenburg (1624–1697), director of the troupe. Helena Husen (1622–1680), Daniel Ludovich, Anna Parker Boonefijs, Geertruitrained or Boonefijs, Dorothea van Voornenburg. This troupe performed the play Dus for the public in 1684, and thus the theatre is known to be more than a court theatre from this point forward. Gillis Noseman, husband of Ariana Noseman. Trial Parker, Jacob Sammers, 1632–1689. This troupe was made up of idealistic students, all male. It had played in Uppsala in 1682–86. The theatre was permanently moved to Bollhuset in 1689. Alaus Rudbeck, Johann Celsius, Isaac Bork, the director of the company. Carl Johan Oljeqvist, Andreas Stromberg, Georg Tornqvist Adlerkreutz, actor, writer and translator. Johann Widman, The German Theatre 1691–1697. Elisabeth Denner, prima donna. Denner the Elder, Denner the Younger, Harlequin, Dorsius, Big Muller, Little Muller, Ferdinand Egedius Paulusson, Johann Christian Spiegelberg, Johann Veldens, director. Katharina Elizabeth Velton, later director. The French Theatre 1699–1706. Marie-Anne Orbit, singer. Jean-François Bernard, dancer. J.B. de Croo, musician. Gillette Batelvier d'Archemin, d. 1765. Jean-Pierre d'Archemin, 1674–1754. Antoine Dupré, musician. Françoise Fabre Picard, dancer. Claude Ferdinand Guillemet Duchesne de Rosador, director of the troupe. Marianne Guillemet Duchesne Beige de Rosador. Robert Lemoine de la France, musician. Henry de la Motte, musician. Louise Picard, dancer. Jacques Ercutenot, musician. Marie Trouche Duchesne de Rosador, d. 1705. The German troupe 1721. Gabriel Müller. This troupe performed opera in 1723–24 and then spoken drama. Jean Perret Le Chevalier, 1688–1774. Charles Longlois, actor, later director of the Bollhuset Theatre in 1737–1739 and 1740–1754. Jean-Baptiste Landais, dancer, director, later founder of the Imperial Russian Ballet. Madame Landais, opera singer and dancer, wife of Jean-Baptiste Bergot and Laura Romaine. This is described as using a very visual way of acting, with fireworks, acrobatics, pantomime and harlequin performances. J.C. Kreutzer, Martin Müller. This was the first Swedish troupe. It performed both opera and drama, and it also contained the first Swedish dancers, though the names are sadly often missing. Johann Bergholtz, Christian Berner, dancer. Johanna Katharina Imbeck, Margareta Maria Fabritz, one of the first Swedish-speaking actresses, mother of Margareta Suling. Nils Flodel, Anna Maria Gottling, Anders Hallberg, Christian Knoppel, dramatic. Peter Lindahl, comic and director. Johan Ohl, singer and musician. Johan Palmberg, Britta Christina Schenbaum, Petter Stenborg, one of the first Swedish-speaking actors. Star. Beate Sabina Strass, the first native actress in Sweden. Elizabeth Lillström, one of Sweden's first professional actresses, prima donna, mother of Elizabeth Olin. The French Theatre 1753–1771. Marie Baptiste, singer, prima donna, mother of Marie-Louise Marcadet. Angelique Madeleine Ce Acutanes, child actress. Gaspard Ce Acutanes, dancer, father of Angelique Madeleine Ce Acutanes. Thérèse Antoinette Ce Acutanes, sister of Angelique Madeleine Ce Acutanes. François Antoine Joseph Rousseau Chatillon, 1729–1802. Barbe Marguerite Henry Couturier, comedian, mother of Angelique Madeleine Ce Acutanes. Ninon Dubois-Leclerc, dancer, employed until 1779. Marie-Jeanne Chateauneuf-du Londel, 1706–1772, director. Monsieur Compagnie d'Espervière. Madame Desroches, singer. Jean-Louise du Londel, child of Marie-Jeanne Chateauneuf-du Londel. Louise du Londel, director, 1756, dancing master of the Crown Prince. Louis Galadier, dancing master. Marguerite Morel, dancer, wife of Louis du Londel. Pierre-Claude Sinisola Solini. Elizabeth Leclerc Solini, prima ballerina and ballet mistress. This was an opera troupe, meant to complement the French theatre troupe. It consisted of members from the company of Pietro Mingotti. They also performed in concerts in Rudolf. Gasparo Beccaroni, soprano. Giovanni Cocchi, Croce, tenor. Elena Fabrice, alto. Mariana Gagliotti, soprano. Rosa Scarlatti. Domenico Scoli, castrato. This was an opera troupe, not a theatrical troupe. Nils Magnus Anishtit. Lovisa Augusti, opera singer. Hans Bjorkman. Charlotte Eckermann, dramatic. Anna Sophia Holmstead. Christopher Christian Carsten, singer, maternal grandfather of Marie Taglioni. Lars Samuel Leyland, 1729–1785, singing master. Anders Nordin. Elizabeth Olin, daughter of Elizabeth Lillström. Ulrika Rosenlund. Charlotte Slotsberg, the first Swedish ballerina, also a royal mistress of Charles XIII of Sweden. Franziska Stading. Carl Stenborg, considered founder of the Swedish-speaking theatre and opera. Diedrich Tellerstedt, singer. Hedvig Wiget. The French troupe was a separate and autonomous troupe within the building called the French Theatre. They came to Sweden in 1781 and performed in Drottningholm until 1783. They acted as instructors to the Swedish actors until Dramaten's Elevskola was founded. They were sent home after the death of King Gustav III. Mademoiselle Baron, Monsieur Delaroche, Monsieur de la Tour, Madame Dutelier, François-Marie Mousset Félix, Monsieur Feuillet Louis Frossard, Sophie Huss, Jean Marcadet, Marie-Louise Marcadet, singer and tragedienne, Anne-Marie Melendez Gillens, Jacques-Marie Boutet de Monval, director. Monsieur Saintonge, the first native troupe for spoken drama in Bollhuset since 1754. The actors were instructed by the French troupe, and formed its own theatre under Frederick Ristel in 1787. When it went bankrupt in 1788, it formed the Royal Dramatic Theatre. Samuel Algren often played the hero parts. Abraham de Broen, one of the most prominent actors of his time in Sweden. Louise Deland, dancer, singer, comedian. Elizabeth Forselius, comedian and singer, married to Johann Christian Friedrich Hafner in her first marriage. Maria Frank, dramatic actress, later director of the theatre school Dramaten's Elevskola. Lars Hjortsberg, singer and dramatic comedian. Fredrik Loen, regarded as the most celebrated Swedish actress of her time. Ebba Mormon. Caroline Fredricka Muller, singer. Louise Sinta Eacut and Eacut Gots. Carl Schuylander. Kjell Waltman, comedian. Andreas Widerberg, dramatic. Inger Abbott.